Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I'd like to say how pleased I am to be here. I look forward to a nice chat with you guys. You have a small sense of where I come from, where I came from, and so on. I'm going to be a little more specific than that. Essentially, I can divide my life into two distinctive periods. Life before my exposure to the arts, and after my exposure to the arts. Before the arts, I was a feisty kid with an abundance of physicality from the blue-collar community of Bayside, Queens. I channeled my physicality into sandlot baseball in high school and college, varsity athletics. However, that physicality was interrupted at a rather early age. I was 7 years old. My mother was taking my sister to a local ballet school in Queens, and I used to hang out in the streets and get into physical trouble, cuts and bruises and things like that. My parents weren't thrilled with it, but they understood what my physicality was really like. All of this kind of changed one day when I got hit in the back of the head with a baseball. I was about 7 years old at that time. And my teammates got very concerned because I was knocked unconscious. So they all picked me up, and I was dazed, and they brought me to my house, put me on the stoop, and then they ran. Get out of that place. At any rate, when my mother got home, she got very upset with me. She said, "You know what, we cannot trust you on the streets of Queens. No more. You will not hang out in the streets of Queens." I said, well, why not? Why not? She said, "Well, I'm going to take you along to your sister's ballet class." I said, "Come on, you've got to be kidding. You cannot subject me to that. That is unfortunate of you to think in that manner and fashion." But at any rate, I was dragged along. I was not very pleased, obviously, but what further did not please me was there was me, 40 giggling girls, and their mothers. Not what I would call my area of comfort. But I sat there and I watched and got terrifically bored until they started to jump. Whoa. I can relate somehow to that. So I meandered to the back of the studio, and I was trying to imitate what they were doing. And as I was doing that, I was also making fun of it. And I got a dirty look from the teacher. I thought I was in trouble. I was. Because she said to my mother, "You either get him out of here or stick him in tights at the bar." The next day, I was in tights at the bar. I was, needless to say, humiliated. Absolutely, totally humiliated. And the worst thing would be if my pals ever heard about it. So what I used to do was a 2-flight walk up to this studio, and I would wear what I thought was a disguise. I wore my baseball uniform over my tights. I had my bat, my glove, and my cap. It's a 2-flight walk up to this place, and I walked up backwards. And my rationale was, if any of my friends saw me, they may think I was going out to play baseball and not to point my toes. But at any rate, there I was. And as time was going by, I was more and more exasperated, more and more, until more became interesting. because I was saying to myself, what a great physicality this stuff is, and it has so much more than what my normal physical activities had. There was music, form, line, theater, drama. You could speak a physical language. So I started to change my mind a little bit, but obviously I was not going to tell anybody that kind of thing. And as time is going by, my father said, why are you in tights? My father ran a trucking business in the garment center, and his two closest friends were professional prize fighters. So as much as I was humiliated, so was he. At any rate, as time is going by, I'm beginning to fall in love with this kind of thing. It's, oh my God, how did that ever happen to me? That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. At any rate, time is going by. My father is further displeased by all of this. My mother had found a guy called George Balanchine who had a school, the School of American Ballet in New York City. So she brought my sister in. My sister auditioned. She was accepted, given a scholarship. And my mother offhandedly said, oh, incidentally, I have a son at home who also dances. They said, a son, a boy, can he walk? So there I was at the School of American Ballet. And time, again, is going on. It's a very sophisticated place, wonderfully sophisticated, artful kinds of people. So there I am, continuing, and I'm learning more and more and more, and I'm getting better and better and better, and I found that I could fly around. I could really do that. I could jump, I could beat, I could turn, I could do all of those things, and maybe not with the most sophistication, but you know, I could really do it. Then the tragedy of all tragedies occurs in that my sister said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. My mother got very upset, and she said, hey, that's it, it's over, it's done with. No more ballet in this house ever again. I said, wait a minute, I'm getting pretty good at this, and I kind of like it, and I may even want to be a ballet dancer. Well, that did it for my father. I mean, that... at any rate, my father said, nothing doing. He said, you are going to college. I said, I'm going to dance. You're going to college. I said, I'm going to dance. I went to college. He decided I needed a military school, and at any rate, my father says, you're going there. So, indeed, I wanted to rebel, but I just didn't have it within me to just take off. I was still 16 when I was sent to college. So what did I do there? Well, I learned a lot. I became a guy who won his letters in baseball there. I was also welterweight boxing champion, which pleased my father. As I say, his two closest friends were professional fighters, and they would come to see me, and my father was in his absolute glory. At any rate, in the last year I was there, I said, this is not the kind of physicality I really want to pursue, baseball, boxing, all the rest of it. I really, really would like to be a dancer. I got my degree. I gave it to my dad. I said, Pop, this is for you. For me, I'm going to be a dancer. He didn't talk to me for a year. At any rate, life is going on. After a year, I sent my mother and father tickets to our second opening after 1 year. And my father said, okay, where we will be sitting and where you will be standing in the back there, we may not even recognize you. And I said, well, just come anyway if you like it. I'll leave word with the doorman, stage doorman, and you can come back. If you don't like it, I will certainly understand. 4 ballets on, I had 3 soloist principal roles, flying around and doing all of this kind of stuff. At any rate, the evening ends, curtain comes down, George Balanchine comes out, and he's telling me what I had been doing right and what I had been doing wrong. And our conversation was not verbal. We, again, speak this kind of physical language. At any rate, our conversation is going on, curtain goes up, dark house, stagehand comes, puts the nightlight. Balanchine and I now finish our conversation, bow to each other, shake hands. He goes off stage right. I go off stage left, and suddenly I see and hear something, and there were my mother and father in the wings in tears. So the 3 of us stood on that stage, laughing, hugging, and crying. My father became a ballet and handed out my reviews and pictures in the Garment Center, which is... But at any rate, I now had a number of things. One, what I wanted to do, but also I had parental approval. Now, while I was attending the New York Maritime College, I gained higher education in commerce and the military. That was added to my constant need to move and be physical. However, it wasn't until George Balanchine invited me to join his company, New York City Ballet, that I had my first serious exposure to art and a completely different kind of physicality. And what I experienced and learned there utterly transformed my life. I discovered a mind-driven physicality, dance, what Balanchine called poetry of gesture. Once that discovery crossed my horizon, and I began my sojourn as a dancer in Balanchine's singular world, my life was unalterably changed, and I never looked back. As a dancer, I could live the Greek ideal of a balanced life of the mind and the body. And I had the rare privilege of working with 2 of the 20th century's greatest creative minds, George Balanchine and Igor Stravinsky. Their collaborations produced masterworks, and when I had the opportunity to approach these works as a dancer, I knew I was in the presence of their minds and an articulation of their remarkable genius. That opportunity was both exhilarating and terrifying. When Balanchine gave me the extraordinary role of Apollo, his and Stravinsky's Apollo, that's something very, very different, he gave me this, and to prepare for performance, I could not have achieved what I did without first absorbing the wealth of information and experience that he had to impart about his creation. We don't just step on stage and do a role. We are responsible for maybe 8 or 10 different manner and style and periods over the last 300-odd years. In the time-honored custom of our field, passing knowledge and experience from body to body and mind to mind, the genius thus conveyed to the neophyte his insights and thoughts about the role. They were unbelievable. I just could not believe what was happening. Imagine what it was like for me as a young artist, filled with an enormous desire to learn, to be the beneficiary of what the master had to teach me about his Apollo. He provided his points of departure, made sense of abstract gesture, and then helped me to understand it. During this transmittal of knowledge, Balanchine demonstrated one gesture that was completely revelatory, a gesture that both built a characterization and defined the character of Apollo. How do you present yourself as a Greek god? A characterization of choreographic masters, Greek god, ripe with his images of swooping eagles, matadors, chariot drivers, soccer players, bicycle riders. This process of teaching and learning, giving and receiving, provided me with an artful approach to prepare future roles. What I thought about dancing before that experience was, again, just I had ability, I had talent, and I just flew around. As an athlete, I could lift. As a dancer, I had to lift, but more particularly to partner and look after another dancer colleague. Wonderful sense, wonderful feeling of looking after a woman on stage. Partnering is an intimacy of physical conversation, a mutual exchange of dependence and trust, two bodies and two minds working together as one whole. For the past 50 years, I've devoted myself to the art form of dance, particularly classical ballet, first as a dancer, then as a teacher and artistic director. Dance has taught me so many lessons and enriched my life in more ways than I can ever describe. It gave me the ability to speak in silence, to animate movement in the most sophisticated way, to physicalize music, to see the honesty of art, to know what is correct, the one possibility that is right. Dance inspired me to seek what is ideal, what is unattainable, perfection. Dance required me to understand human behavior and develop the ability to express and to express it theatrically, and understand human behavior and develop the ability to express it theatrically, to express human relationships in the context of historical period and style, and then to link this understanding back to line and form. Dance showed me how to swim in time through designated space with gestures of incredible integrity. Dance taught me how to respond to music with a keen understanding of the intimacies of timing in relation to the architecture of the score. Dance illustrated how abstraction is an idea reduced to its essence, and how the physical expression of that essential idea through qualitative entertainment can produce human pleasure. Dance revealed clarity by teaching me to recognize what is not necessary and how to be economical with gesture. Dance taught me how to portray emotion, and in the process, I learned a way to be aware of and help control life's emotions. Dance gave me discipline and formal structure, but it also gave me the freedom and knowledge to move with artistic ease, removing all tension in both body and mind. A pretty good life lesson. However, time eventually deprives us of the pleasure of active portrayal. This inevitability, however, provides us with a different type of pleasure and an opportunity to repay an accumulated debt. In terms of that debt, I was provided with great works that took care of me as a dancer. Now it was incumbent upon me to return that debt and look after those ballets. I've traveled a great distance from the position in which I started, that of the neophyte receiving precious information from the master, to one filled with enormous desire to preserve that information as authentically as possible and to pass it on to the next generation of dancers. Those internal intimacies that I had learned from these great people. 25 years ago, this desire, coupled with my desire to repay a debt to a genius and the teachers and mentors who gave me a life of art, led me to create another entity, Miami City Ballet, as a vehicle to continue sharing with the world what these masters taught. 50 years ago, when I started my career as a dancer, it seemed clear to me, as it still does now, that to live with an understanding of music, dance, art, elegance, and nobility could be a point of departure for a life role, the art of life. I was probably so extraordinarily lucky to be around when those guys were around and when the New York City Ballet was formed. However, this did not come easily and without pain. We are to talk about the body. I'll talk a little bit about my wounded body. I am the proud recipient of 9 broken toes, stress fractures in both legs, an operated knee, no longer operable, a bad back, arthritis, and 3 hip operations. This is an incredible art form wherein this incredible art form. We, in what we do, is not normally natural to the body. So it's incumbent upon us to make the unnatural natural to us. Give you an idea, some of you may know this, but how we function is to turn out. We turn out everything. A great teacher once said to me, "You have to turn everything out, including your face." Okay. But in order to turn out, we need these rotations. Normally we walk this way. We can't. We have to adhere to all of those good things. Would I have done it differently? No. It was worth every single moment of it. Once I had it taken away from me, I knew I needed to get it back. I needed to find out how to do these things. And I was fortunate in that I could do it for 20 years. And then it started to fall apart. I was dancing at the White House, and I finished dancing, and I was in the East Room dancing with Mrs. Ford, and I had this terrible pain in my right hip. I couldn't sleep that night, went back to New York and saw the orthopedic surgeon of the New York City Ballet, and he said, "Your career is over." I said, whoa, wait a minute. I'm booked for the next 3 years. I can't stop this now. No, it's done. It's over with. It took me about 10 years to get over this stuff. And when I found what I really wanted to do and needed to do was become an artistic director. And as you know, I founded the Miami City Ballet. I am not only the founding artistic director, but I'm also the CEO. And what that means is I'm responsible for everything. I refer to myself as the adult. I had to be the parent of all of these guys, all of these dancers, and to guide them in a manner and fashion. And again, as I say, to repay that debt to my art. I started this company 25 years ago. To start a company from the ground up is very, very different than taking over something that's already organized. However, there are tremendous advantages in that. You don't inherit personnel. You don't inherit previous problem. You don't inherit difficult financial sorts of things. I was lecturing one day down in Miami, and I was approached by half a dozen people, and they said they wanted to make a company there but didn't know how to go about it. Would I consult and advise? I said, sure. So I wrote an 11-and-a-half-year plan for them. I did a year and a half of seeking money, seeking board members, seeking all of those kinds of things that support around a company. I did a 3-year production plan, a 5, and a 10-year production plan, organized with budgets and the rest of it. And I did 5 years of programming before we opened, so that we had a goal. We knew where we wanted to go. And fortunately, that plan has been terrifically helpful, but somewhat complicated in that we were ahead of ourselves. We were far out there, so we had to raise all of this money, but it had to be put on the stage because we were growing and growing and growing. And we didn't, and still don't, have an endowment. So it means I have to raise somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million a year. Not my favorite activity, but certainly an incredible necessity. We have come a long way. We are now talked about in the same category as the New York City Ballet, where I come from, American Ballet Theater, San Francisco Ballet. New York City Ballet has a $63 million budget, ABT a $46 million budget, San Francisco Ballet in about the same neighborhood. Our budgets are usually 12 million. This year, we have 15 million because we are celebrating 25 years. And we are going to celebrate in a terrific way. We do 5 programs. One of them is Nutcracker. We are doing a company premiere on each program. A Jerome Robbins work, Twyla Tharp work, a Paul Taylor work, and the Cranko Romeo and Juliet. So it gives us further wonder, and it allows us to be poised to move on and move forward. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been told that I should leave about 20 minutes for questions that I may answer. So, excuse me, if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to entertain those now.
Can you tell us something about your partners and who are some of your favorite dance partners?
The one I was dancing with that night. I had an abundance. I really did. I danced with Patricia McBride, Millie Hayden, Kay Mazo, Allegra Kent. I mean, it was a magical time. It was one of those golden periods in American dance. The easiest one to dance with, Patty McBride. She was just amazing. I once danced something called the Tchaikovsky pas de deux with 5 different ballerinas in a week. But, wow. And you really had to know these ladies because you had to anticipate as a partner where they were going, how they were moving, and all of those kinds of good things. It was fascinating in that week of Tchaikovsky pas de deux. I would offer a hand to Patty McBride, and we said, "Take care of me," and she would, and I did. And there was Melissa Hayden. Hey, here I come. So again, forgive me for making light of this, but I did have an abundance of great partners, and it really depended upon the role and those good things. But they were phenomenal individuals.
Can you relate a bit about what it was like to work with, I think it was the New York City Police, and was it not an athletic team too?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Can you relate the work that you have done with some of the athletes and some of the other organizations, non-ballet?
Yeah, I can. We are a very specialized physicality, and I was beginning to tell you about all of the things that we are responsible for. And because I was an athlete in high school and college and the rest of it, I can relate to that. I can relate to what it's like to be a boxer, what kind of training you would need. And I'm sorry to say to the athletes of the world, there's no more challenging physicality than the world of classical dance. It takes 8 to 10 years to train a dancer, but those dancers have to start when they are about between 8 and 10. Takes those 10 years. In terms of athletics, what I see today, amazing. These guys, these ladies, are so far beyond what it was like in 1957 when I first joined the New York City Ballet. They are far more sophisticated. The training, I believe, is far more sophisticated. To give you a small idea, I was an artist in residence at West Point, the ballet dancer at West Point. At any rate, I work with a lot of those disciplines, and just a small little thing to indicate. When I was working with these guys, I found they didn't work their feet, and that's all we do. We articulate with our feet, and they were astounded to say, "Oh my God, yeah, how about our feet? How about our feet?" Anyway, that's a small way of hopefully saying that we are very, very sophisticated, and now athletics in this time are so much more sophisticated. I've been watching the World Series. I've never seen pitching like that. That was just extraordinary. And these announcers are talking about how these guys could put a pitch up here, the next one down there, the next one here, and it would move or go straight or it'd be straight and then move. That was absolutely unheard of, I thought, in my time. So anyway, I hope I've waffled around that answer.
Hello. You mentioned all your injuries, and I'm wondering if something's being done differently now to protect the future of the young dancers.
Very definitely. I grew up in the age of early television, and television in those days, the cameras were this big, so they couldn't have wooden floors. They had to have cement floors. I broke 8 of my toes on television. So at any rate, now we have wooden sprung floors for dancers, in addition to which now the educational process is far more sophisticated and involved than when I was first beginning and first starting. I've made a lifelong investigation of how to train. I needed to do it because I hadn't danced those 4 years, and I came back and I just plunged into all of these things. And I kind of didn't help my body. I started to get muscle cramps. And what I'm doing is getting to the point of saying that in 1957, there was not a masseur in the theater. We had nothing to help us. Now, that's a very, very different thought and idea. For instance, in our company, what I try to do is preventive, keep people from being injured, to reduce the inflammations. We have every day physiotherapists, masseuses, masseurs, all the rest of it. So we attempt to take care of the body because, again, what we do is basically unnatural. It's very unnatural, some of the things that we do. So indeed, this stuff has come a long way. Way back in 1957, I hadn't even heard of sports medicine. Now, sports medicine is incredibly advanced. I mean, it's just remarkable. And needless to say, I would love to have had that kind of help way back in those years. But that's the nature, and that's the nature of our lives. So it's incumbent upon me now to take care of those dancers because I need them. I need them badly.
Hi, over here. I have 2 questions. Is the fact that your company is located in Miami an influence on you culturally, or the regional influences in your artistic direction? And will you be bringing your company to Chicago to perform?
Well, I'm happy to say a little over a year ago, we made our Chicago debut. And we would be thrilled and excited to come back anytime we are invited. One needs to be invited to do those kinds of things. When we came here, we brought a couple of ballets that probably hadn't been seen in Chicago, specifically Stravinsky, Balanchine, and so on. Stravinsky and Balanchine, very, very complicated guys, very, very difficult to teach. It's very, very difficult to teach because a lot of dancers, and the dancers that I first got, were trained basically for 19th century kind of stuff. And the rhythmic stuff in terms of classwork was kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not Stravinsky. Stravinsky is and the rhythms change all the time. So you have to be with it. You have to be above it. You have to be on top of all of those good things. Okay.
I'm wondering, when you made the 11.5-year plan, what was your basis for that, and how did you decide exactly in what steps to do things?
Well, most balletic artistic directors, I've lost my point. Give me that question one more time. My head is flying around it.
When you made the 11.5-year plan, you got it? Or keep going? How did you decide exactly?
Well, first of all, when I decided I wanted to be an artistic director, I thought I knew enough about classroom stuff, rehearsals, and stage. I did. I knew that. But I didn't know all the other parts of all of this stuff, finance and marketing and all of those kinds of things, dealing with unions, negotiations, and all of that. So I decided, gee, there is not an academy to learn this stuff. You have to do it yourself. And what I did was I found 2 of the worst companies I could find. And the rationale there was, if they weren't good companies, they had a lot of problems, which I then had to solve. No better way than to have to solve problems. So I did that for 6 or 7 years with 2 different companies. And coincidentally, just around that time when I felt I knew what I needed to know, I was asked to make a company. So not only my background, but also my own initiative, I found out how to do this stuff. In terms of the artistic part of it, that comes from my background and my experience and the great people that I had worked with. Again, I suggest that if I hadn't taken that time to learn all of these other things, I was in a position to make a 6-figure mistake, and I certainly didn't want to do that. So in terms of the organization and picking repertoire and so on, that was very, very natural for me to do. And I knew the great choreographers. I knew of the masterworks, and I decided that's all we would deal with is masterwork. So that was my own kind of initiative to do this sort of stuff. We rarely commission a work because, number one, we don't have the money. But But secondly, you really don't know what you're going to get. It's a crapshoot. So I decided I would not do that. And we are only now just beginning to find young, very, very talented people. I was in London last April, and I have some pals at the Royal Ballet, and they invited me to a dress rehearsal. And there was a ballet on that was absolutely astounding. And I said, who has done that? A 24-year-old kid in the Corps de Ballet at the Royal Ballet. And fortunately, I ran into him in the hall, was introduced, and I asked if he would like to come. And he's going to come next year. So we'll see how all of that works and happens.
Looking back, can you tell us what your favorite solo and pas de deux were, and tell us why they were so exciting?
I have a lot of favorite works. Most of them are works that Balanchine did on me. And the wonder of having a genius used you as his raw material. Fantastic. I mean, just incredible. And Balanchine was the kind of guy, if he saw you struggling with something, he'd say, no, don't worry, I'll make something else. And that's what he did. So getting a work from him was like going to a master tailor. You always looked good. And that's our function, is to look good and please you guys. I mean, that's what we are about. What else can I tell you? Oh, my favorite ones. Okay, yeah. Well, again, mostly the works that Balanchine did on me. One of my most favorite is the ruby section of the full-length Jewels. Apollo, obviously Apollo. The other is Prodigal Son. And Prodigal Son, I was in the New York City Ballet maybe 3 years, 4 years. Didn't have much background and experience. George Balanchine taught me the role in 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I never saw him again. So I had to work very, very hard at these kinds of things, and the harder I worked, the better it got, obviously. The thing I loved about Prodigal was it was my first title role. And Balanchine said, you know, you're pretty good. This is pretty good. Not bad. But think of what he did. He gave me this role like that, never saw him again, and he wanted me to discover. And that was an enormous lesson, to figure it out yourself, to figure out that Prodigal Son is based on Russian constructivism. I didn't know what that was. I had to find out about all of those things. And once I got started, Balanchine came up to me and said, you know, you look like nice little Jewish boy. So, anyway, I could go on, Tarantella, Bugaku, all of these other things. Again, being a very, very fortunate guy.
Yes, what an honor first. Here I am.
Where am I looking?
All the way up.
Oh, wait, oh, okay.
Yes, again, what an honor. I have 2 questions for you. One, where do you see classical ballet going in 10 years?
Well,
the culture has changed so much. Is it thriving and surviving? And 2, what are you doing to increase future patrons?
To analyze on an ongoing basis, to do variety, to know what we were doing, to do these things the way they were originally intended. it's a question of responsibility. Where is ballet going? My responsibility in terms of where our company is going. I brought our company along to the point where we can dance almost any style, anywhere. And the only thing we need are more resources. These things cost great deals of money, and as I suggested, we have a $12 million budget, and we're competing with $63 million. So we better know what we are doing. We better know how to qualitatively entertain. And I think what's happening a lot in our field is that we have been dominated by the 19th century, these big old wonderful story ballets, the Giselles, the Don Quixotes, and all the rest of them. We do those things, but we only do them to make sure that we can do them, but they are also, in a way, demanded by our public. So I've been trying to get our guys in Florida off that idea of just having these big, elaborate works. But if you do a Stravinsky Balanchine work, they are neoclassical, they are non-literal. And so who are you on stage? There's a wonderful Stravinsky Balanchine ballet. The music is the Stravinsky Violin Concerto. And it's structured in this way: big opening, big closing, recognizable stuff you feel comfortable with. In the middle, two pas de deux. Who are they? I have to explain to these guys. I can't just let them go on stage. So I do my own researches and find out and all of these things. The two pas de deux in the middle was about Stravinsky divorcing his first wife and he feeling her pain. And once you know that, and you look at those two pas de deux, you understand. They're constantly coming and back and forth and all of these kinds of things. So in terms of moving this art form forward, it's incumbent upon guys like me and other guys to explain this stuff to audience. Very, very difficult to, you know, if you've never seen a Balanchine Stravinsky ballet, you know, it looks, I don't know what it looks like. But I do know who those people are, who they should be on stage. So very, very important that we know what we are doing and we can pass it on. That phraseology I used before, Balanchine talked about teaching ballet as body to body, but also mind to mind. So important for us to know those things.
So this will actually be our last question. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to the opening night of the Chicago Humanities Festival.
One more question. Sorry, did you ever choreograph a work? And if not, why not?
I have choreographed. But I don't do it on an ongoing basis because if you're going to be a choreographer, that's what you should be. I prefer to be an artistic director, so I didn't go down that road of investigating choreographic possibility. It's also a terrific danger because as an artistic director, you cannot provide yourself, and that's it, for repertoire. The only people who can do that are guys like George Balanchine, Martha Graham, people like that. So very, very carefully do we approach these things.